Welcome to Movie Caps. Today, I will show you an epic historical war film from 2004, titled, Troy. Spoilers ahead. Watch out, and take care. In ancient Greece, King Agamemnon unites different Greek kingdoms under his flag, to end the long-last wars among them. In these wars, Achilles, who is known to be a great warrior in the entire kingdom, and has always fought by the king's side and won many battles for him, does not agree with many of Agamemnon's strategies. Upset by his attitude, King does not want him in the army, but cannot let him go as the army needs him for the fights to come. In the region of Sparta, Trojan brothers Prince Hector and Prince Paris meet King Menelaus of Sparta, for a peace offering between them. As they stay in the kingdom for several days, Prince Paris and King Menelaus's wife, Queen Helen, fall in love, but the affair displeases Hector. Knowing that King Menelaus has the full support of his elder brother King Agamemnon, Hector scolds Paris for his affair with Helen, as he thinks this might lead to a war in Troy, but Prince is not ready to give up on her. As they begin sailing back to Troy the next day, Paris reveals he has snuck Helen into the ship. Hector fights with him again, and orders the soldiers to sail back to Sparta so they can return her, but Paris forces him to continue their journey to Troy, because he does not want to leave her back in Sparta. Meanwhile, King Menelaus finds out that Helen has left with the Trojans, and plans to seek revenge on them. He meets his brother King Agamemnon, and seeks his help in getting her back and bringing the war on Troy. Agamemnon discusses his plan with his army, when he is informed that Troy has never been conquered before, but he still orders them to prepare for war. Realizing the strength of the Trojan army, King Agamemnon is also suggested to ask Achilles to join them, and he unwillingly agrees, knowing that they need the best warriors to fight one of the greatest wars in history. In order to pursue Achilles, the king seeks help from Odysseus, the king of Ithaca, one of the close friends of Achilles. Odysseus meets Achilles, and his younger cousin Patroclus, and convinces him to join the Greek forces in the war. After being unable to decide, Achilles meets his mother for advice on whether to join the war or not. She encourages him to go, saying that although she knows he won't be able to return to her, he will be a hero and his glory will be remembered forever. After joining their forces, the Greeks prepare a fleet of 1,000 ships, and begin their voyage towards the city of Troy. Meanwhile, Paris and Hector come back to the city with Helen, and introduce her to their father King Priam, who calls her Helen of Troy, and welcomes her into the kingdom. After Hector meets his wife Andromache and his cousin Briseis, King Priam celebrates his son's safe return to the city. Later, Hector discusses Paris's decision of bringing Helen with him, and suggests sending her back, but Priam disagrees with him, saying he is willing to fight a war to protect his son and Helen. Helen worries about King Menelaus's next move, to which Paris suggests leaving the city and going somewhere else, but she stops him knowing Menelaus won't give up until he finds her. Upon the king's orders, the people of Troy start preparing for war and sharpen their weapons, while King Priam worships the gods to seek their help. After a few days, Trojans spot the Greek fleet in the sea, and ring the emergency sirens to inform the citizens. As the fleet approaches the beach of Troy, King Menelaus finds out Achilles is already taking the lead with his ship. Achilles' second in command, Aeteros, asks him to wait for the rest of the army to join, but he orders him to continue moving forward as he believes in his power. Meanwhile, Hector, who is also known as one of the best warriors in the region, prepares his army for the counterattack, and orders them to bring the citizens within the city walls. Achilles arrives at the beach first, and uses his army of Myrmidons to attack and conquer the temple of Apollo. Hector, along with his men, soon arrives at the temple and challenges Achilles to fight against him, but he asks him to go back, and wait for the next day until the battle properly begins. As Achilles wins the first battle, the Greek armies start chanting for him, but this offends King Agamemnon and Menelaus, as they believe it can threaten their position. At the end of the day, Achilles is informed about Hector's cousin and priestess Briseis, who they took from the temple. He tries to talk to her, but she accuses him of killing the priests, and says God will seek vengeance on him. Achilles later joins King Agamemnon, and gets upset to see him celebrating the victory he achieved single-handedly with his men, but Odysseus advises him to stay calm and ignore the king's politics. As Achilles argues with the king over who should have the credit for the first victory, he gets upset to see that the king has abducted Briseis. He intends to attack the soldiers to get her back, but is forced to leave her as she stops him from fighting, because she does not want anyone else to be killed for her. After the Trojans cremate their martyrs, a meeting is held to discuss the war strategy for the next day. An argument arises, as some of the soldiers think they should return Helen to save Troy, while the others favor the war. Seeing the situation, Prince Paris steps up, and decides to fight a duel with King Menelaus, in exchange for Helen's hand. Paris also apologizes to King Priam for bringing the war on Troy, but he does not blame him, and gives him the sword of Troy, while advising him to use it in his fight against Menelaus. At night, Prince Hector spots Helen secretly trying to leave the castle and stops her. She considers herself responsible for the deaths of the Trojan soldiers, and intends to go back to King Menelaus, but he sends her back to Prince Paris. The next morning, Achilles is informed that the armies have started marching towards the city, but he decides to stay back until King Agamemnon begs him to join the fight. Helen watches the armies line up against each other, and apologizes to King Priam for the war she brought on Troy, but he assures her it's not her fault, and offers her to watch the battle with him. Before the fight, King Agamemnon presents two demands to Hector, asking him to hand over Helen and submit to his kingship, but Hector rejects them, saying the Trojans will never accept his rule. Prince Paris, who has been listening to the conversation, puts up his suggestion to fight a duel against King Menelaus, saying they should not involve the armies in their dispute. King Menelaus and Agamemnon discuss his proposal, as Menelaus wants to take his revenge on the prince, but King Agamemnon wants to conquer the city instead. He plans to start the war anyway, but accepts Paris's offer as well. The fight between Paris and Menelaus begins, but Paris gets injured and quickly retreats to Hector, who kills Menelaus in return. It enrages King Agamemnon, and he orders the army to start the fight against the Trojans. Hector bravely fights in the battle and takes down a Greek king, while the Trojans also put up a great fight and kill many soldiers, hence forcing the Greek army to retreat to the beach. After facing a great loss in the battle, King Odysseus argues with King Agamemnon, and asks him to put his differences with Achilles aside, and invite him to join hands with them. Agamemnon unwillingly agrees to talk to Achilles, but Odysseus says he will want Briseis back in exchange for his support. Agamemnon agrees to do it, but says he has already given her to the soldiers so they can use her for their amusement. The soldiers try to abuse her, but Achilles arrives and rescues her, after killing two of them. He takes her back to the camp, where she tries to kill him, but the two fall in love with each other and spend the night together. The next morning, as Achilles orders his men to prepare the ship to sail back to Greece, Odysseus meets him and tries to convince him to join King Agamemnon. Patroclus also requests Achilles to stay, as he thinks going back will be equal to betraying the Greeks, but Achilles refuses to stay. Meanwhile, the Trojans celebrate their victory and discuss their next move. King Priam's second in command, Glaucus, thinks they should move forward and take advantage of the situation, to send the Greeks away from the beach. Hector does not agree with the proposal, as he thinks they should not underestimate the Greeks, but the king still orders the army to prepare for the next battle. At night, Achilles tells Briseis about his plan to leave the next morning, but the situation quickly changes, as the Trojans attack their camps. Achilles' army spots him in the battleground, and starts fighting as well. Soon Prince Hector beats Achilles in the duel, but finds out it's Patroclus instead. Hector unwillingly kills him, and orders the army to go back to the city. The next morning, Achilles is visited by his commander Eurotas, who tells him that Patroclus used his armors and dodged them, as they thought Achilles was leading the fight. He gets devastated to hear about Patroclus' death, and plans on taking revenge on the Trojans. Anticipating Achilles' next move, Hector takes his wife Andromache to the secret tunnels, and advises her to leave the city with their son if anything happens to him in the fight. He also shares his regret for mistaking Patroclus for Achilles, because he thinks he was too young to die in battle, but it's too late now. After cremating Patroclus, both Achilles and Hector prepare for the fight. Achilles arrives outside the castle, and challenges Hector for a duel. As Hector prepares to leave, King Priam praises him for being the best son, who made him proud in every fight. After saying goodbye to his brother Paris and his wife Andromache, Hector leaves for the final battle, while Helen watches him walking away from the castle. Outside, Hector asks Achilles to make a pact to honor the funeral rites of the loser, but he declines the offer. The fight begins, and both fight bravely against each other, but Achilles eventually takes him down. He kills Hector, and drags his body back to the beach in front of his family, who watch over him in distress. At night, Hector's father, King Priam, sneaks into Achilles' camp, and requests him to return his son's body, so he can fulfill his funeral rites. Ashamed of his decision to kill Hector, Achilles agrees to honor his request and returns his body. As King Priam tells him the ritual continues for 12 days, he offers a truce for this time, so the Trojans can pay their homage to Hector. Meanwhile, Briseis sees her uncle and rushes to him, while Achilles apologizes to her and allows her to go back with the king. After learning that Achilles has offered a 12 days truce, King Agamemnon gets angry with him for going behind his back, and expresses his intentions to burn down the city of Troy. As the war gets intense with time, King Odysseus becomes concerned about his soldiers, and makes a plan to end the battle. Achilles orders Eudorus to take his army back to Greece, but tells him he will stay back, as he still has the battle to fight. After 12 days, King Priam and his men walk outside the city walls, but find that many Greek soldiers have died of plague, and the others have sailed back to Greece. As they roam around the area, they also find a giant wooden horse, which the priest thinks is a victory trophy, and suggests taking it back to the castle. Although Prince Paris and the commander disagree and ask to burn it down, the king honors the priest's suggestions, and orders the army to take it inside the city walls. This proves to be a war strategy from the Greeks, as Odysseus and Achilles, along with their selected soldiers, are revealed to be hiding inside the giant wooden horse. They secretly step out and kill the guards, before signaling to the Greek armies, who have come back in the dark. They open the city gates for the Greeks, who soon arrive in the city and take control within no time. The Greek soldiers kill most of the Trojans, and torture their women and children, while King Agamemnon orders to destroy the city. King Priam finds out about the attack, but it's too late for the counterattack, and he is forced to watch Troy burn to ashes before his eyes. Andromache follows Hector's advice, and takes the citizens out of the city through the secret tunnels. While saying goodbye, Helen offers to stay back with Paris, but he forces her to go, while he intends to stay back with King Priam, knowing he won't ever leave the city. Paris hands over the sword of Troy to one of his cousins, and asks him to protect it and find a new home for the Trojans. Meanwhile, Briseis, who is rushed to the temple to pray in front of the gods, is attacked by King Agamemnon, but she kills him. His soldiers try to attack her in return, but get killed by Achilles, who has made his way through the city to meet her. Soon, Prince Paris attacks him as revenge for his brother, and fatally injures him with an arrow through his heel. Accepting his fate, Achilles convinces Briseis to join Paris, and leave the fallen city of Troy. King Odysseus honors him, and cremates Achilles' body himself, while the royals of Troy leave the city forever. The end. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you'd like to see more videos like this. Turn on the notifications and leave a like to help the channel out.